August 18th, 11:47 p.m. A hospital room, a live stream still running, and a baby boy taking his first breath while the chat spams emojis. August 22nd, roughly 11 in the morning. Same man, same house, same stream. And the sentence of the day is, put the baby down for days. That's the distance between we may be having a baby, chat, and a full-volume argument about whether a 96-hour-old human being is being held too much. I had to check the dates twice. The dates are correct. Real quick, if this is the kind of paper trail that belongs in your feed, tap in, lock the notifications on, ride with us on this one. Here's the ground. Johnathan Jamall Porter, Blueface, is home after serving close to 2 years of a 4-year sentence, released and back on kick almost immediately. His girlfriend, Nevaeh Akira, went into labor midstream on August 18th. He literally asked her to confirm with medical staff while the chat watched. That night, Johnathan Jamall Porter Jr. arrived, his 4th child, her 2nd. 4 days later, the cameras are still on, and the baby's nap schedule is now a public referendum. And I want to slow that math down, because the compression matters. 2 years in a cell, 12 days home before the labor stream, 96 hours between the birth and the first argument the internet got to grade. That's not a soft reentry. That's a man walking out of custody and onto a broadcast schedule with no decompression chamber in between. Every choice you're about to watch was made by somebody whose last 2 years of muscle memory were survival in a facility, and whose next 2 weeks of muscle memory have to be father of a newborn. Those two operating systems don't share drivers. Keep that in the back of your head, not as an excuse, but as context. The paper's the paper, regardless. One more piece of ground before we file. This is a household with pre-existing footage. The domestic assault case that sent him inside was Crizian-era, publicly litigated, and left a paper record the whole ecosystem read. Nevaeh is not Crizian, and I'm not going to conflate them. But the audience watching this stream is watching it through the Crizian lens, whether Nevaeh signed up for that framing or not. That's a preloaded viewership. Every clip that dropped in the last 96 hours landed on eyeballs, already trained to expect a specific kind of episode. He knows that. She knows that. The chat definitely knows that. And once an audience is preloaded, the incentive on the streamer side isn't to disappoint them. Lay the exhibits down. Exhibit 1. The birth itself live-streamed. Complex documented the moment Nevaeh told him she was in labor while he was broadcasting, "Chat, we may be having a baby," and he kept the stream running through the hospital trip. That's not a recap. That's the man's instinct on record. Life event first, camera already on. And I want to underline what kept the stream running actually means in Kick's economics, because this is where the paper gets thicker. Kick's revenue split is famously creator-favored versus the Twitch model. That's not opinion, that's the platform's public pitch to talent. Every minute that stream stayed live through the hospital hallway was a minute cutting a check. The instinct isn't neutral. The instinct is monetized. He didn't leave the camera on because he forgot it was there. He left it on because turning it off would have cost him the peak traffic window of his entire calendar year. Exhibit 2, the name. The couple had publicly floated Solar Porter for months. The birth announcement landed as Johnathan Jamall Porter Jr., a junior, reported as one of Blueface's long-standing requests, agreed to after the fact. A name change on a birth certificate is a signature, not a vibe. Keep that in your pocket. And keep this next to it because the timing is the receipt. Solar Porter wasn't a whisper, it was the branded, sonogram-era, matching outfit gender reveal name. It had merch potential. It had a story. It got replaced on paperwork inside a window where a postpartum woman is legally still recovering from delivery. Whether you read that as a loving concession or as leverage applied at the softest possible moment depends on where you sit. What isn't in dispute is the sequence, her plan going in, his name coming out. The document doesn't record who wore who down. It only records who won. Exhibit 3. The morning stream for days postpartum. On the recording, Nevaeh, crying at points, describes not sleeping, describes a baby who won't be put down, floats the word postpartum herself. His read, verbatim on stream, "Is this postpartum? No, it's you getting on my," and later to the chat the theory that she's enabling a 4-day-old baby. Reposts of that same segment circulated with the additional line that postpartum only lasts 24 hours, a claim that's medically nonsense on its face, and one that outlets flagged inside the day. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists puts the postpartum period at a minimum of 6 weeks of recovery, with mood disorder risk running through the first year. 96 hours in, a woman is not past anything. She is barely into it. That's not opinion. That's the clinical clock every hospital in the country discharges patients against. Exhibit 4, the exchange about last night. She says she came to him 3 times overnight asking him to come upstairs. He confirms the 3 times. His defense is that he told her by the 3rd time he was in a good sleep. Both of them, on the record, agree on the sequence. They disagree on what it meant. That agreement matters more than the disagreement. When both parties in a live stream dispute concede the same factual timeline, that timeline is now the anchor everything else gets weighed against. She came down 3 times. He said no by the 3rd. Nobody's fighting the fact, they're fighting the meaning. And the meaning he chose in real time, in front of the numbers, was that a woman 96 hours out of labor asking for help 3 times in a night was the aggressor in the transaction. Read that sentence twice because it's the whole tape in miniature. And Exhibit 5, sitting in the background of the whole tape, her older son, Superior 4 years old in and out of the frame, and Blueface telling the chat that Superior's habit of asking to be picked up is proof of what happens when you hold a baby too long. He's citing a 4-year-old as precedent. Okay, Exhibit 5A. While we're here, the household composition itself is on the record. Johnathan Jr. is Blueface's 4th child. Superior is Nevaeh's from a prior relationship. That means the 4-year-old being used as evidence in the argument isn't even biologically his. He's using another man's kid as a case study to indict a woman's parenting of the baby they just had together. The rhetorical move is doing more work than he thinks it is. It says, "Your history is admissible against you, mine is not. Now sequence it. Wait, back up. This part's the part. The labor announcement, the birth, the name change, the first argument, all of it happened on camera or within arm's reach of one. That's not a relationship with a camera in the room. That's a production schedule with a family in it. Line up the timestamps. August 18th. Labor, live streamed content gold. August 18th, late. Birth, announced everywhere within hours. Then 4 days of silence on the feed. And the very first thing we see when the cameras come back is not the baby, not the recovery, not the name change celebration. It's a fight about a shower. The man's return to content strategy appears to be conflict first. And look, I want to be careful here because 4 days of nobody sleeping in a house with a newborn will make anybody ugly. That's real. But most people have that fight with the stream off. And the 4 days of silence itself is the sequencing tell nobody's isolated, because those 4 days aren't actually silent. They're the window in which the birth announcement, the name reveal, and the aggregator posts do their unpaid promotional work for him. He goes dark exactly long enough for the news cycle to seed anticipation, then comes back live at peak curiosity. That's not a coincidence in a streaming economy, that's a drop pattern. Musicians do it with singles. He did it with a delivery, then the Superior thread. He frames it as parenting philosophy, instant correction, snippet in the bud, for days not 4 years. But follow what he's actually doing on tape. He's building a case file against a newborn. The baby can't be put down, therefore the baby is being enabled, therefore she did the same thing with Superior, therefore Superior asks to be picked up at 4, therefore he Blueface is the only adult with the long view. That's a full argument structure. He came in with it. You don't improvise a thesis like that at 11:30 a.m., you walk in carrying it. Walk it back further. The she does this every time premise requires him to have been observing Nevaeh's parenting of Superior long enough to build a pattern, which is a strange claim from a man who spent most of the last 2 years incarcerated. The observation window doesn't line up with the accusation's time frame. Either he's compressing years of assumption into a 4-day-old baby's behavior, Or he's importing a critique of a woman he hasn't actually lived with continuously in the entire boy's toddlerhood. Either way, the argument requires ignoring where he physically was for most of Superior's life. And the food subplot, which nobody's pulling apart. "I still ain't ate yet. It's 11:30, said to a woman 4 days out of labor who, by his own on-stream admission minutes later, cooks on command all the time. He flags the empty plate, then concedes the cooking, then circles back to the cleaning. The grievance mutates every 90 seconds. That's not a complaint. That's a casting call for a complaint. Chart the mutations, because the drift is the story. Minute 1, the plate. Minute 3, the cooking cadence. Minute 5, the shower he can't take. Minute 7, the sleep she interrupted. Minute 9, Superior's pickup habit. Minute 11, the baby's nap. Every 90 to 120 seconds, the target of the grievance moves. That's not a man venting, a venter perseverates. That's not a man arguing, an arguer picks a hill. That's a man cycling complaint types on a segment rotation, because the chat's engagement graph decays if a single beat runs too long. Streamers who've watched their own analytics know exactly what I'm describing. He's pacing to the retention curve. Zoom in. 3 lenses. The frozen milk. Mid-argument, the baby cries, he takes him, asks if there's milk pumped. She says it's frozen. He says thank you and moves on. Had to read this moment twice, because for about 45 seconds, the whole performance drops. He's just a guy holding a hungry baby asking where the milk is. The mask slips, the dad shows up, and then the stream persona pulls him back under. That 45 seconds is the most honest footage in the entire tape, and it's the part nobody clipped. And that's the diagnostic. Not that the mask exists, everyone with a camera has one, but that it's removable. He can be present. He demonstrated it on record for 45 seconds. In the middle of a fight, he was otherwise winning against himself, which means the version of him that shows up for the other 59 minutes is a choice, not a condition. That's the lens shift. We're no longer asking, can he? We watched him do it. We're asking, why doesn't he? And why doesn't he only has commercial answers? The volume ladder. Play the tape with your eyes closed. His baseline is already loud. That's Blueface factory setting. We know the voice. But track the modulation. When he addresses Nevaeh directly, the voice tightens and drops a half step. When he pivots to the chat, it broadens and lifts presentation register. When Superior wanders into frame, it softens completely. 3 different vocal deliveries inside the same continuous take, cycled in under a minute. That's not mood. That's an actor working 3 cameras. Whether he knows he's doing it is the only question left, and the honest answer is that after this many years of live streaming, the reflex is below the level of conscious choice. The performance is the resting state. The chat dependency. Count who he performs to. Every escalation gets routed outward. I don't be wrong, chat. I promise you I don't be wrong. You guys see small pictures. I see bigger pictures. He is not arguing with Nevaeh. He is litigating Nevaeh in front of a jury. He can see the numbers on. When a man says, promise you I'm not wrong, to a live chat, instead of to the person crying in the room, the relationship isn't the audience. The relationship is the exhibit. Layer one more data point on top of that. Kit displays a running viewer count in the corner of the streamer's own dashboard. He can see, live, whether the argument is holding numbers or bleeding them. Watch the moments he escalates. They cluster around dips. Watch the moments he softens. They cluster around the milk beat when he'd already regained the room. He is performing to a graph the audience cannot see, but he can. That's not a metaphor. That's the interface. The deal shadow. Kick's talent economics run on a mix of subscriber revenue, hourly slot deals, and tournament-style creator bonuses that reward retention hours as much as raw viewership. The Verge. A streamer with a signature contract doesn't get paid for going viral in a clip. A streamer with a signature contract gets paid for keeping people on the stream itself, which means the incentive is exactly what we're watching. Not the punchline, but the drag. Not the fight, but the length of the fight. The economic pressure on this specific tape is toward more of it, longer of it, uglier of it, for as many consecutive minutes as the household will supply. The name. Solar Porter was the public plan. Johnathan Jamall Porter Jr. is the certificate. Now place that next to the argument. You're trying to get me to hold him every time you need to do something. It's not going to keep me here. The signature locked the legacy down. The sentence 4 days. Later prices. Out what staying costs. One document, one sentence, same ledger. And this is the exhibit that outlives the news cycle. Everything else on the tape is ephemeral. Clips get demonetized, streams get archived and buried, chat scroll. A birth certificate does not. That document sits in Los Angeles County Vital Records with a name on it that ties a 4-day-old child to a specific man's brand for the rest of both their lives. There is no version of this story where the paperwork softens, when the reconciliation arc runs, when the makeup stream drops, when the next fight lands. That name is still on that certificate. That's the only piece of the file that cannot be edited in post. Watch how the same tape got cut 3 ways. The first frame ran it as comedy. Blueface wakes up and immediately starts arguing, cry-laughing emoji, clip channels farming the pick-up me John line like it's a catchphrase. That frame requires you to forget there's a newborn and a postpartum woman inside the bit. And it's the dominant frame, which is the part that should bother you. The comedy cut is the one that traveled. TikTok compilations, IG reposts, catchphrase edits with beat drops under the audio. The comedy cut is the one that farmed the most reach, because comedy is the frame that lets an audience share a domestic argument with a hospital bracelet still on woman inside it without feeling implicated. It's the frame with the lowest social cost to repost. That's why it wins. Not because it's true, because it's cheap. The second frame ran it as alarm, posts noting he told her postpartum only lasts 24 hours and called her lazy days after delivery. That frame's closer to the bone, but still treats it as one bad boyfriend moment. The alarm frame is closer to accurate, but it's stuck at the individual scale. It reads the tape as a man behaved badly at his girlfriend, which is true, but it doesn't ask why the behavior was performed at broadcast quality with a monetized graph running in the corner. The alarm frame stops at character. The paper we're building keeps going into structure. Character explains the words. Structure explains the microphone. The third frame, and somebody in the comments is already typing it, is she knew who he was. She said it herself. Don't have a kid with this person. And look, that read deserves to be taken seriously because she did say it on camera. But here's where it falls apart under paper. The same man quoting her warning back at her is the man who reportedly pushed for the junior name, streamed the labor, and moved the whole family into his content pipeline. You don't get to cite the warning label as your defense when you're the one who pulled her back into the store. If anybody inside that household between the hospital and this morning wants to tell me that framing's wrong, comments are open. And I mean the people who actually know, not the ones who watch 2 clips. And there's a fourth frame nobody's running yet, which is the one this channel exists to run, the labor conditions frame. What we're watching is not a relationship, and it's not comedy, and it's not one bad morning. It's a workplace. The household is the set. The newborn is the intellectual property. The postpartum woman is the co-star who did not sign a talent agreement. And the streamer is both the lead actor and the executive producer of a program where the on-air talent has no green room to retreat to, because the green room is her bedroom and the cameras follow her into it. That frame reframes every previous frame. The comedy stops being funny. The alarm stops being isolated. The victim blame stops being coherent. Because none of those frames were pricing in the fact that one party in the argument was clocked in and the other party was on maternity leave from a job she never applied for. The Steelman for him, because the paper demands one. There is a version of this where a man who has just come home from 2 years inside, from a facility environment where volume dominance display and refusal to be caught slipping are survival adaptations, is genuinely dysregulated at 96 hours postpartum in a house full of strangers, cameras, and an infant, and is not calculating anything at all. That read is available in this evidence. I want to name it clearly. because a fair prosecutor names the defense's best argument out loud before pointing at its weaknesses. Its weakness is the graph. A dysregulated man doesn't check retention. A dysregulated man doesn't smooth his voice for the chat pivot. A dysregulated man doesn't cycle grievance types on a 90-second interval. A dysregulated man snaps once and then either escalates past the camera or collapses inward. He did neither. He performed a 60-minute set. The mainstream read is simple. Blueface is a chaotic man doing Blueface things, and this is Tuesday. That's the soft version. Here's the harder one. This wasn't a relationship having a bad morning. This was a release strategy that found its conflict. Think about what the tape actually is. A man comes home from nearly 2 years inside. His catalog's cold. His name's been carried by other people's drama, and his first week of relevance is entirely purchased with one asset. This baby. The labor stream, huge numbers, the birth announcement, every blog in the ecosystem. And then the algorithm needs day 4 and day 5 and day 6. You can't monetize a sleeping newborn. You can absolutely monetize an argument about a sleeping newborn. And the tell is the grievance drift we flagged. Plate, then cooking, then cleaning, then superior, then the shower, then the sleep. Nobody has that many separate problems in 1 hour unless the problem is the hour itself. He wasn't upset about the baby being held. He was building segment blocks. Now, the honest hedge, because the paper has a hole in it, he could also just be this. There is a version of this tape where there's no strategy at all, where a man with a documented decade of treating partners as props simply did it again in his kitchen at 11 in the morning, and the camera was incidental. I lean against that read, but it lives in the same evidence, and I'd be lying to you if I pretended it didn't. The honest counter to my own read. Strategy requires foresight, and Blueface public record does not reward the assumption of foresight. This is a man who has, on multiple occasions, undercut his own career in real time on his own platforms. A man who sabotages his own upside is not obviously the same man capable of scripting a 6-day content arc around a newborn. The he's just doing it read has weight, but even that read doesn't clear him. It just moves the charge from calculation to compulsion. Either the camera is a strategy or the camera is a compulsion. Neither is a defense of what's on the tape. Both leave the postpartum woman in the same footage. Here's why I still land where I land. Promise you I don't be wrong, chat. That's not a man caught on camera. That's a man polling his audience mid-argument. The camera wasn't the witness. The camera was the co-counsel. And here's the second reason, quieter, which is the milk beat. Because if the whole thing were compulsion, if he genuinely could not turn the persona off, the 45 seconds where he did turn it off wouldn't exist. But it does exist. It sits inside the tape like a control variable. It proves the persona is a shirt he can take off, which means the argument is a shirt he chose to keep wearing. That's not compulsion. That's wardrobe. And the junior name closes the case for me. The brand now has a successor. His full government name on a 4-day-old sign filed announced. Everything since has been syndication. The baby got his name. The stream got its content. She got, "You're really a bird on camera for days out of labor." Watch what happens when the clips finish their cycle. Within 2 weeks, expect the reconciliation arc, an apology stream, a gift, maybe a baby shower adjacent event with cameras at the door. He's reportedly already run this exact play once this month, apologizing on stream after a separate heated exchange about a DNA test and an empty refrigerator. The apology is part of the programming, not a break from it. And if you worked anywhere near that streaming ecosystem in the last 3 years, you already know how often the makeup episode outperforms the fight. Drop what you've seen, I'm reading those. The specific shape of the apology arc is worth flagging in advance so you can score it against this file when it lands. Beat 1. A solo stream where he addresses the situation without naming it, framed as reflection. Beat 2. A joint stream, softer lighting, baby present, Nevaeh visibly composed. Beat 3. A purchase, a car, a piece of jewelry, a house tour, offered as reparative content, not as private restitution. Beat 4, a return to conflict episode within 3 weeks of the reconciliation, because the reconciliation is only useful if it resets the meter for the next drop. Save this paragraph. If 4 for 4 hits, we don't need to speculate on the format anymore. We can just publish the schedule. Don't be surprised if Nevaeh's own platform is the wild card. She's currently the only person in that house the audience feels protective of, and sympathy is a transferable currency. If she starts streaming solo, even soft content, even just her and the baby, the numbers follow her, not him, and that flips the whole household power structure in about a month. The one thing his format cannot survive is the sympathetic party getting her own channel. And that's the fork in the road for her specifically, because there are 2 versions of that solo channel, and only one of them ends well. Version A. She streams the newborn, the recovery, the day-to-day, and gets pulled deeper into the same content pipeline that made this morning possible, just with her name on the door. Version B. She goes quiet on the household entirely, streams something adjacent, a hobby, a business, anything that is not the baby, and lets the sympathy compound in the background without spending it. Version B is the version that ends with her having her own leverage in 6 months. Version A is the version that ends with 2 streamers competing for the same custody clip. Nobody in the ecosystem's incentives is going to advise her toward B. That's why it matters that somebody says it out loud. By the time Johnathan Jr. is old enough for the clips to resurface, the residue lands on him. That's the 5-year read. A kid whose first week of life is permanently archived as a content arc, the labor stream, the name change, the 4-days-old fight, searchable before he can spell his own name. The check he's named after keeps clearing long after the stream's end. Somebody in that family is going to have to explain this footage one day, and it won't be the chat. And the 10-year read, since we're already looking downfield, the generation of children currently being live-streamed from birth is the first cohort in human history whose entire childhood is discoverable by a stranger with a search bar. The academic literature on that cohort doesn't exist yet, because the cohort is too young for the outcomes to have landed. But the paper on it is being written in real time, and Johnathan Jr. is now in the sample. He didn't opt in. Nobody in his position ever has. The question isn't whether the archive affects him. The question is only how, and when he figures out it's there. If he grows up and never asks his father to take the footage down, that's data. If he does ask and it stays up anyway, that's more data. Either way, the tape we're grading today is the front page of the child development case study somebody's going to publish in 2036. That's the actual timeline this file sits on. Remember that gap I opened with? For days between we may be having a baby and put the baby down? Now, you know what fills it. You saw the paper, you saw the timestamps, you land where you land, drop it in the comments. If you rode this whole receipt with us, tap in, subscribe, hit the bell, the next case is already on the desk. Wrap and receipt. We keep the screenshots.